All right. So, first of all, would you start off by telling us your full name
Mary Elizabeth Geiger,
and when were you born?
November the 2nd, 1917.
And in which city and state were you born?
Well, I was born in a small town north of here, Hilliard, Florida.
How long have you lived in Springfield?
Let's see now, I have been in Springfield. I'm 100, and I moved here when I was 19. So can you figure that out?
So tell us about your family, Miss Mary.
Well, we moved to Hilliard when I was 5 years old. I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and moved to Hilliard when I was 5 years old.
And where were your parents from originally?
And my parents were born in Georgia. My father was born in Wrightsville, Georgia, and my mother was born in Florida. She was born in Baker, Florida, a little town called Baker, Florida.
Now, what brought you and your family to Springfield?
Well, my father passed away. He was county commissioner in Hilliard, and there was no employment much for we 4 girls and my mother. So we moved to Jacksonville, and my mother bought a house in Jacksonville. And we lived in that house until it was downtown Jacksonville, and she decided to move to Springfield. So she bought the house that we now live in Springfield on Cottage Avenue.
And tell me about your sisters. What were your sisters' names?
Well, I had 3 sisters. One of them was Ruth. Next one was Betty. The next one was Hazel. There's 3 girls.
Now, what memories do you have of your parents and your mom and dad, your sisters?
Well, we had to get located, and I didn't go to school here. I went to school in Hilliard, but the other 3 girls went to school in Jacksonville at Duval School.
Now, tell us about your experiences in Springfield when you were a child. Anything you can remember?
We had a lot of experiences. At that time, you could just go out at night or do anything, you know. You didn't even have to lock your door if you didn't want to. And we would roam around, and that we didn't have transportation like we have now. And we would ride buses and ride downtown from Springfield and go shopping. Even in the evening when it was late, with no fear at all. It wasn't like it is now. So we had a good teenage years in Springfield.
Where were some of the places that you went shopping, like some of the names of stores?
We go, Penny's was right downtown, and May Cohen's was on Bay Street, and it was a small store, and there were a lot of stores everything was downtown. We didn't have shopping centers in those days. So everything was right downtown, a shopping area and just everything. And we had, streetcars for transportation.
Right.
Like we have buses now, we had streetcars then. And it was a different story. And as I say, all the shopping was downtown, everything. Dime stores, clothing stores, and everything. And even some of the grocery stores.
Now, Miss Mary, what was it like to be in Springfield?
Well,
days?
Springfield was, of course, real small, you know, and everybody kind of knew everybody because the population wasn't as much. And people were closer to each other because there weren't as many people. And then we had the downtown district down here. We had the shopping area in Springfield here. We had Woolworths and a lot of the clothing stores. And we just walked from here downtown. We called it downtown. That was down on 8th Street. It was a shopping area down there. The stores are still there, but they were different stores now. But they were clothing stores, and then the grocery stores. There was a big grocery store on 8th Street. Was kind of like a little shopping area for Springfield. We had little clothing stores, a little grocery store, and things of that nature. And people from Springfield could just walk downtown. We called it downtown because it was a shopping area. We had the movie down there, the Capitol Theater, downtown, down on Main Street. It was on Main Street. Everything was downtown. Everything was in the shopping area. We called it at 8th Street. That was the shopping area there. The stores are still there. The buildings are still there. Well, we had a skating rink for the young people, and let's see what all we did have. They had a little boxing ring, you know, the boys all went to for boxing arena they called it. And then, as I said, the Capitol Theater, and that was about it. I mean, as far as amusement places.
So now, what is your most special memory of
Springfield.
Springfield?
Well, going to the park. I forgot to tell you about the parks. Hammond Park was about well known then that for people just to go there and congregate and visit. They would have a little dance teams that would come on, and they would have political rallies down there, you know, candidates making speeches, and just any event that you know that they needed, that they'd had it there in Hammond Park. Hammond Park was very popular. Had the lights all on and everything. And the main thing I remember about Springfield is at Christmas time, everything, you know, was downtown. There was no shopping centers. And they were standing there with a kettle, you know, for you to drop money in, and they were playing music. There was a lot of music down there. There was a lot of activity, a lot of going on down there in Christmas time, around Hammond Park. Right there was the bubble of downtown. Mm.
Now, are there any people, specific people that you remember from your time here in the neighborhood? Anyone that ever stood out to you that you had a friendship with, or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had a lot of friends. It being so small, you could say, hello, John, hello, James, and everybody in a little bulb there sometimes knew everybody. And we began to seem more like family because the population wasn't as much, you know. So I don't know. I just and a lot of friends. We were a lot of kids, you know, too then, and we get together and skate and go to the show and just have fun that way. There was just only one thing. I mean, it wasn't a bunch of anything, just one theater, one this and one that.
Who was your closest friend that lived in Springfield?
My closest friend. Well, she was, her name was Hemming. She was Mr. Hemming of Hemming Park's niece. And she was my closest friend. Mary Beth Hemming was her name. Mary Beth Hemming. And her relatives, father or somebody, is the ones that donated Hemming Park to Jacksonville.
Wow. Do you remember the swimming pool that was here in Springfield?
Swimming pool, yes. Uh-huh.
Do you have any memories of that?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. I know my mother would tell us to be very careful. She didn't want us to drown. And we'd go swimming. And then there was a little place downtown, I think it's a library now, that we used to have the little boxing matches, you know. And if they were going to have a boxing match on like on a Tuesday or Friday night, that was a big event.
Right.
Everything was a big event because we didn't have very many. So I enjoyed living here. I got married when I was living in downtown. I did, and then I moved on out of Springfield later. But all the sisters were living here in Springfield.
How did they meet?
How did you and your husband meet, Miss Mary?
Well, we met in Hilliard, Florida. We went to school together. Yeah, he was a little older than me, and he told his brother one day, he said, you know, I think I'm going to marry Mary. And his brother said, well, don't be too sure of that. But then I moved to Jacksonville before he did, before I married him. And he always said I thought I'd get rid of him, but he followed me on to Jacksonville. And we went together after I moved to Jacksonville and got married here in Jacksonville. But we met in Hilliard. We went to school together in Hilliard.
And how many years were the two of you married?
35 years we were married. He died rather young. I mean, compared to some marriages, but we were married 35 years.
Very good. So, Miss Mary, tell us about your memories of during the war when you were here in Springfield.
During the war, of course, it was bad for everyone. They were on food stamps, and things were rationed. And at that time, me and my husband had already got married, and we were living in a boarding house downtown. And they rationed food then, you know. There was a shortage of things. And my husband, he still had some cattle in Hilliard. And meat, there was a shortage and everything. And so he would donate some of this cattle meat. They butcher the meat and so forth, and they'd ration it out. So he did some of his cattle that way. We lived right there, as I said, next door to the rationing board, and they'd ration out so much sugar, so much meat, just so much. You could only have so much. but a lot of people slip things under the table, just like they do today.
What's it like
And,
living in a boarding house?
But that was pretty bad times then, it really was. I mean, you know, people were losing lives in the war and shortage of food, and but we all came through.
What was it like living in a boarding house?
Here's the boarding house.
What was it like to live in that boarding
Oh,
house?
it was wonderful. We were like one big family. Oh yeah, we have we call the lady of the house Mom, and when we get ready for a meal, we'd all be sitting in the living room, and she'd ring this bell, and we'd all jump and go into the dining room for our meals, you know. And there were a lot of marriages because a lot of people met there in the boarding house. And we had the piano in the living room, and we would get in the living room and sing. And when Roosevelt made the speech that night, we were all there in the living room.
So what is something that you would like everyone to know about Springfield?
You would like
What's something that you would like for everybody,
for everybody
to know?
else. Well, Springfield is a very nice place. I mean, people were friendly and helpful. Back there in time of trouble, if there was sickness or death or anything, we were sort of like a family. And I really liked Springfield. I think it had some wonderful people, and I enjoyed living here.
What about during wartime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to down people at all, but I think they were just, I guess they had more time then, you know, to do things than people do now. But it seemed like they had more time for each other, you know, than we do now.
So how has Springfield, over the years, when you look back, how has it changed?
Well, I hate to say it, in some ways, it didn't change it. It has begun to do better, but I mean, there were some beautiful homes here, still is. But as the older people moved out, and they, you know, left it to their children, and you know how children are, and they didn't take care of it like the elderly people did. And some of the buildings really went down. That was kind of sad. But now, I think it's coming back up now. I mean, they're trying to do that. It was a bad time in there, but I can see it sort of revising now that it's coming back up, and I'm glad.
Do you have any stories that you'd like to share? It can be something funny. It can be something something sad. Any story that you would want to
Well,
share?
let me see what I can think of. Well, my sister and myself, when we were downtown, when we were both, I mean, my sister never married, but I had never married at that time. And we were going with brothers, you know, dating brothers. And so this one night, I couldn't go for some reason. And so one of the brothers got another girl. But my sister went along, but they didn't know she was my sister. So, okay, they all went out, the two couples, and this girl that didn't know Ruth was my sister, she starts talking, you know, and she said, well, she said, he's been dating, my hair was red, it's gray now. She says, my sister, I mean, this other girl that didn't know my sister, she said, I know that, meaning that he'd gone with me, I know you've gone with this redheaded girl because I've heard that you did. and you didn't know I did, but I did. And I didn't like her at all. She thinks she's so and so and so. And see, my sister said that she doesn't know that's my sister. So when Ruth got through with her story, Ruth said, "Have you finished?" Yes, she said, "I have. I sure didn't like her." Ruth said, "Well, I'm so sorry you did. I kind of like her. That happens to be my sister." Oh, well, anyway, let's change the subject. That was kind of funny, I tell you.
Yeah.
Ruth was about ready to jump over you.
So tell us more about your sister Ruth, because y'all lived together in
We
your
live
house.
together over here.
Right.
Where I am right now.
Tell us a little bit about you and Ruth's time together here in Springfield.
Living here together. Well, we've done real good. We right. We wore down. Most of all my family have gone, you know, and just left she and I. And she wasn't much of a shopper, but I was. And we'd go shopping, and she'd say, "Mary, now you just sit right down here and shop all you want to, and I'll hold your packages and all." But she'd buy what she was going to buy, that was it. She wasn't a shopper. But we didn't have a place to shop but downtown. There was no shopping centers. But that was good times, and she and I had a lot of fun. And then in more recent days, about 10 years ago, we used to go down the landing. You know, she loved ice cream, and we'd go down the landing and get a big dip of ice cream. That was a big deal then. So we had a good relationship together, and they're all gone now. And I'm the only one left in my family. I had 3 sisters, and of course my mother and everybody. But I've sort of inherited my next door neighbors. They're very nice people. And I just had dinner with them. And I told them they can fix that dinner any time because it was delicious. So I wound up in Springfield at 100 years old with wonderful neighbors.
Yeah, so. Do you remember, Miss Mary? It was one of the first times that you and I sat down and talked. You called this house the House of Love.
Yeah, that's right.
Would you tell us a little bit about
this was a boarding
that?
house, you know. And we had, and now this house, it goes, I think, if I understood correctly, this was the first house in Springfield. This was the contractor for Springfield. He built these houses. Yeah, I've heard that, yeah. This was his home. He built all these houses. He was a contractor. And that's what my mother told me she had learned. And but the boarding house, there was a lot of nice people that lived here, and there was a lot of romance here. To several people that got married. You know, in fact, my sister did, and she would go down to First Baptist. Everybody walked everywhere then. And she'd walk to the bus line and get a bus and go to First Baptist. And he would be sitting on the porch. He lived in this house. This was the boarding house. He'd be sitting on this porch. And he kept watching her every Sunday. He said, "You know, I kind of like the looks of that girl. I'd like to meet her." And so one morning he stopped her. And she said, "The only way that I would go with you if you go to church with me." "Well, I'll go to church," he said. He hadn't been going to church at all, but he got himself dressed, and the next Sunday he went to church with her. To make a long story short, they got married. They went together, got married. And then there was 2 other cases, the same thing right here. They met and were married. So this is a good place if anybody wants to get married to meet somebody. So Springfield was a pretty good place to live. It really was.
Now, why was this house a boarding house?
I don't, now that, I really don't know. Now, the house, of course, was here when my mother moved here because it was older than our house. It was the first house. It was supposed to be the contractor for these houses. I don't know, but it was very popular in this house. Sure was.
I was just curious if it was like, you know, if it
And
was...
I'm glad that I like to see the houses, remodeled and kept up, because there's material, they tell me, in these houses that you can't buy today. They've been wonderful old houses, and now they're coming back. People are, remodel, just like these people. They have just done wonders with this house. It's just beautiful now. And it looks much better than it did when it was the boarding house. So, I'm glad that it's coming back.
Now, do you remember seeing soldiers
Yeah.
that were coming in out of this house?
Oh.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. They would stay here when they'd have someone come in town. They'd have different places that they'd let the servicemen stay. And this was one of them. Yeah, sure was. See, this house had a lot of tenants in between each other, But the last lady that had this, it was a boarding house, and she had a lot of tenants. But I've seen people go in and out of these houses, and but my friends here have taken an interest in this house so much that it's just beautiful, and I appreciate them being there, because me not knowing being in Springfield for so long, I have a love for Springfield, and I may not be around, but I still would like to see them, still look good. And they have done wonders with this house.
What was Springfield like during the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, all through that period of time there? What was it like to be here during those decades?
Well, it was a little better than it was back in the 40s, but it had a long ways to go, because the unfortunate thing about Springfield, we didn't have the drug deals, the drug problem, and that hurt Springfield a lot, because a younger generation moved in, and that's never good. And that we didn't have anything. We could walk out here say at midnight if you wanted to. Never lock your door. Never worry about anybody attacking you. Never worry about anything. I've been downtown many times at 10 o'clock at night downtown. Can you imagine that? Me and my girlfriend, we'd go to a show downtown, and then go in and have a soda, and be around 11 o'clock. Just us, we didn't have no man with us. And then we'd just get a trolley car home at night, and never worry about anybody robbing you, never worry about anything. You didn't hear as much about all that. If you listened to the news, it was a different type of news. And that was so sad. That's one thing that hurts Springfield. But I think it's doing better now.
So, Miss Mary, I'm sure you've had this question before, but what is the secret to being able to live to be 100 years old?
I wish I knew. People ask me, well, they ask me the same thing. What is the secret, Mary, to your longevity? I said, I have no idea. Well, did you eat right all the time? I said, no. Did you always sleep right? I said, no. But the question I never could understand, they say, did you ever have any children? I said, no. And a lot of them will say, that's the problem, right? I don't know, because things are different with children that they got on drugs and things like that I never had that worry. I guess that's what they meant. But I've had that over and over and over. That's what, in fact, the eye doctor that I go to, she tells everybody when they come in, if I'm there, this lady right here, she's 100 years old and she never had any children. And so a lot of them will say, yeah, well that's it. It's not eating right or sleeping right. I said it sure wasn't that. But I don't think that's exactly true. But I think in some cases, in other words, the thing they're bringing out, there's more drugs. That's another thing we didn't have, which was so good. That's why we could go out and you wasn't afraid somebody that all drugged up was going to knock you in the head or something. We didn't have drugs. The only drugs we had was for medicine. And that's what they say every time, not every time, but so many, you know, you didn't eat right, you didn't sleep right, but you never had any children.
Now, one of the things I've always admired about you, Miss Mary, is that, if I remember correctly, you used to walk pretty much everywhere you went.
That's it. I think, now a lot of people say, I never drove in my life, never drove a car. And I would walk all over, everywhere, honey. Springfield, ride to get buses, ride on downtown, and I rode every, and I walked. Yeah, I really think maybe the exercise, you know, because I certainly did do that. And my sister did too. But and she was quite elderly, she was 90. But I just walked everywhere. And I think exercise was sort of, maybe that was the key, I don't know. But it sure wasn't eating right, because I'd eat sweets when I shouldn't, and things like that, you know. And maybe not go to bed 8 hours a day, you know. But it's just kind of hard to pinpoint that down. And my other 3 sisters, they're long gone. My youngest sister was only 65 when she died. They all drove except me, but I can't say that that's it, I don't know.
Anything else I can think of?
That's it.
I think you did a wonderful job, Miss Mary.
Yes, ma'am, you
Well-
did.
I didn't do anything trying to. I have no idea myself. I lived to be this age, you know. The other night I was in the grocery store, and this lady that takes me to the store, she was telling the clerk, she said, she's 100 years old. And the clerk said, well, turn around here and look at me. She said, I've never seen anybody who's 100 years old. I said, well, you're looking at one now.
And you look very good.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mason.
You certainly do.
Well, you're gonna have all these wrinkles, and but the thing of it is, I'm glad I'm almost 2 feet anyway. it's kind of not like it used to be, of course, but,
Well, Miss Mary, I think they've got everything that they need,
well,
and
if you haven't, just let me know.